Thank you all for coming. Want to thank Julie and Donna for a fabulous white linen night event. Can you turn off the music?
No.
And the band. They got paid, so people that get paid to do something don't really get rewarded too much. People that volunteer and have to sweat and get their husband to mop, they get a recognition. But White Linen Night was a lot of fun. I think having in that building was great. It was a lot of our first exposure in that building. Hopefully we'll have some more events because I think we can before we get started. And we'll try and find a way to get people to the second and third floor and some of these views or things. But everyone's comments were amazing about the building. I think the ceiling heights, the structure, I think it was really nice. And White Linen Night was very nice. If you didn't get the chance to go, and I'm telling you, Uber's the way to go. I Ubered from Baylen to there. I Ubered my way all the way around the city that night. And it seemed to be a really neat way to travel without worrying about drinking and driving.
There's another one called Lyft, L-I-F-T.
Yes, Lyft is out there. It's a little more stringent on the drivers even. It's a little behind Uber in the publicity, but both of them are apps you can download for free and have access to transportation there. So. Not a lot going on in the calendar. I mean, we're in August. It's the dog days of summer. Heat is here. It's going to be here for a while. We don't have a lot going on until after school starts, whatever. So HISD starts the 25th of August, and so we'll gear back up with some fall activities after Labor Day or something. So I don't think we have a lot of other things going on over there. Okay, we're going to cover a couple different topics today. We're going to start with tax rates. Okay, we don't talk about, so today we're talking about taxes and insurance and value. These are our three topics that we're going to go over. We don't talk about these that much, but I want you to just have some awareness so that you can talk about it. Two types of taxes that we're going to talk about. The tax on the capital gain of your homestead, okay, so that you have an understanding of how this works. 20 years ago, when your parents bought houses or whatever, and you bought and sold a house, you always reinvested the money in your homestead to avoid the capital gains tax. So people were used to this sort of, I've got to hurry up and buy another house so I don't pay taxes on the gain of the sale of your personal homestead. In the Clinton administration, it came back. Rich people didn't like that so much. And so we turned around and we now have tax policy that says if you live in your homestead for 2 of the last 5 years, an individual who made a gain of $250,000 or less, or a couple who made a gain of less than $500,000, now no longer pay any capital gains on their homestead unless they didn't live there. You know, if it was their homestead and they moved away to Europe for 3 years or whatever, they may or may not still qualify. That may not still be their homestead. But if they lived there 2 of the last 5 years, there's no tax and there's no reinvestment rule whatsoever. There is no reinvestment rule at all.
Between 250 and 5?
If an individual on the sale of their personal homestead and the gain, if you buy something for $200 and you sold it for $500,000 10 years later, okay, that's $300,000, okay? And if you were an individual, then the gain would be greater than $250,000. You would not have to pay a tax, and you would have to pay a capital gains tax on the $50,000, right? If we were just apple to apple. But what happens is, if you had a very smart accountant, you could figure out that the improvements that you made to improve your house could be deducted from your basis. Now, normal wear and tear, painting your daughter's bedroom 5 times is not going to be considered that deal.
And can real estate commissions be deducted from cost?
Yes, the cost of it, yeah. So if you sold one for $500,000 and it cost them 6%, a title policy, and the net was $475, and in that 10-year period, they put in granite countertops and changed their metal garage door to wooden garage doors, and yeah, you can deduct that from the basis to calculate that you didn't have a gain. Most people do not have a gain. Unless you're buying in River Oaks and staying 20 years, you didn't have a gain. And most people are couples, so it's $500,000 for the couple. So you probably would not have a capital gain on your personal homestead unless it was greater than 250 or 500,000. So when people ask you about it, you have to be careful what you say. Everything, today's message is be careful what you say, but you can explain how the rule works. If your capital gain is less than $250,000, there is no capital gains tax, and if you're a couple, then there's no capital gains for $500,000 or less. If your gain is greater than that, there could be a capital gains tax on that individual deal.
And that 2 to 5 years doesn't have to be consistent.
It does not have to be consistent. It's just 2 of the 5 years. You buy a house and stay there. So the problem that we could run into, you buy a house and now you're transferred 9 months later. Okay, you're here from London and now you're getting transferred off to Scotland, and you go and you sell your house. You are subject to a capital gains tax because you didn't live there 2 years, right? You only lived there 9 months. So many people are sensitive about that deal. I have 2. You're going to see that we're not able to sell the houses until November 6th because that's when their capital gains tax is avoided or whatever. So you're going to go put it on the market and you're just going to tell the people, seller unwilling to close until after November 7th in order to avoid capital gains tax. It happens all the time. And so if there could be, certainly if you're not there the 2 years, you could be subject to some capital gains tax in that scenario. Or yes, you live in the house for 5 years, you think you're going to come back, you sell it, you go to Pearland, you buy another house over there, you rent this one for a couple of years or whatever, and as you get to the 5-year mark, Crooms was the same way. I used to have that old Crooms townhouse listing. I sold him another house on Fagan. Economy wasn't so great. We leased it for 2 years. We were getting to the end of his 2 of the last 5 years because he had rented it out for a while. His capital gains tax was tied to his income. He was going to have to pay 23.9% taxes on his gain over there, and he didn't want to do that. So he was willing to take $20,000 less than pay $48,000 to the federal government that year.
And if they had no gain in the 24 months of the past 60 months, what would happen?
If there's no gain, there's no gain.
Okay.
Just, there's
You
no
don't get
gain.
a tax credit.
There's no gain.
Awesome.
You used to have this loss that you could carry forward, but you don't really have that on your homes anymore. The loss or gain, as long as it's less than $250, you're out of the bucket. The problem comes from many of us that have these investment properties, though. That is not your personal homestead. All of Shilpy's little deals over here when they're selling 6.5, and Mr. Mayberry stuff, and all these sort of things over there are not people's homesteads. Piece of land that you buy and then you sell is subject to a capital gains tax. Okay? Most likely that capital gains tax is 20%. So the gain, I have a lot, I'm selling the lot behind my house, and just follow the numbers. I got about $400,000 in that lot. I'm selling the lot for $650,000. There's some costs, there's no real estate commissions, but by the time you look at it, I'm going to gain about $240,000. And I don't have any choice but to go pay $48,000 in a capital gains tax over there. I mean,
You
that's
do a
what I'm gonna,
1031.
I could do a 1031, I want that money. So, so I'll be forced to pay a 20% capital gains tax on my lot back there. I don't really have a way around it, but I made a gain. I couldn't have sold it 5 years ago, I would have sold it at a loss. I'm just happy to sell it at a gain over there. But yeah, I'm subject to a capital gains tax on the sale of that back lot over there. These rent houses and stuff are the same way. So not only do they potentially have 20% capital gains tax, in addition, tied to the Affordable Care Act, which is a funding mechanism for the Medicare Medicaid fund, which is underfunded. There is an additional, so it's always, they always refer to it as the Obama tax, but it's for non-homestead property, for high-income wage earners, those whose taxable income is greater than $200,000, or all for investment property, not for homestead, for your investment property, you're subject to an additional 3.8% affordable care tax, whatever one wants to call it. It's a capital gains tax that was tied to shore up the Medicare Medicaid fund or whatever. So in addition to your 20% capital gains tax, you have a 3.8% additional tax on investment property or any capital gains. You have it on rental income. If I make $600,000 and I have 3 rent houses over there, and the gain from that rental income is $40,000 a year, you're subject to the 3.8% capital gain on that net rental income. And get an accountant to figure it all out, but I just wanted you to be aware when you're giving tax strategies to your client, tell them to seek the advice of a CPA, you know, but I wanted you to be aware of capital gains taxes on your homestead, capital gains taxes on your non-homestead, and the 3.8% tax tied to the Medicare and Medicaid funds. Any questions about that?
That's a good topic.
Just wanted to know a little bit about capital gain. It used to be, 10% and 15%. I mean, I'm just telling you, it's 20% these days. And if you're a really high income earner, it's 23.8%. That's what it is. We've got a little chart, a little graph, if someone wants, and we could put it on Backpage that showed what it was in 2010, what happened when the Bush taxes expired, and what it really is in 2014. But what I just told you is really what it is. If you make a lot of money and you sell an asset and the capital gain of the asset that's not your homestead, you're subject to about 23.8% capital gains tax these days.
They used to also have a one-time exemption. Did that go away?
All went away. And so for your personal homestead, you live there 2 every 5 years, there's not any cap on how many times you can do that. Mr. Brandon sells about every 2 years, as long as he doesn't make $500,000 on the capital gain, that's tax-free money that he made on his personal house. He can keep doing it 22 more times, so long as he lives 44 more years, right? There's not a limit. A lot of people are confused. They think this capital gain on their homestead is limited to $250,000 and $500,000 because 20 years ago there used to be a cap. Now it's endless. You make $250,000 or $500,000 on your homestead. As long as you live there 2 years and sell it, you can keep on doing that all you want. There is no cap. That was a very good point. Yes.
Are there any exemptions to that living there 2 years rule?
There are hardship examples, yes. There are a few that have been tested that much to see how they really work. Most people really don't have those large gains over here. I mean, most people can't buy and sell. In the Woodlands, you can't buy a house and 9 months later sell a house and make a big capital gain. By the time you pay a realtor, and I mean, there really just isn't that much capital gain on these short terms, but there are some exemptions. If you got called for military service and you had to sell your house because your wife has to go live with her 9 kids with her mother in Virginia, well then yes, you probably could qualify. I doubt that military guy probably made a lot of money on his capital gains in 9 months, but he could have. If he had a really great realtor for Boulevard Realty, he could have.
Isn't there something about a 1 year and job transfer?
There is. There are some of these exceptions.
Yeah.
If you get one of these exceptions, like I said, very few people have these large gains in 9 months or 11 months or 13 months, but if they do, they could be subject to a short term, or they may qualify for an exemption. These exemptions are not really tested that well to see what sort of consistency the IRS has had with them, because those people don't really get audited until 2 or 3 years later, and we haven't had this rule that long.
Yeah, it's a lot of gray area. Yeah.
It's a lot of gray area on those deals. Better off
50 shades of
more creative. Okay. Off of taxes on insurance for a moment. Insurance can get very complicated. Even here, I find all of our kinds of insurance very, very complicated. We have charts and graphs over here to help Sandra and Arturo and I figure out about the insurance. We're going to try and go over some with you. Boulevard Realty has a general liability policy for this building in the event that it burns down tonight. Lightning strikes it and it burns down. I have an insurance policy, 1545 Heights Venture, that would replace this building, okay? If Jake goes out here and trips and falls down the steps right there and breaks her collarbone, can never sell real estate again, is in the bed, in her little neck brace or whatever, I have an insurance policy that protects us. My general liability insurance policy there. And so that's our general liability insurance policy, which we rarely ever use. When they stole my AC units, I didn't turn in the stupid AC unit to try and collect because I just don't want the claim against me. I'll just pay my way and move on down the road. We've never had any insurance claims for anything under our general liability policy. For us, it cost me about $4,800, I think we just renewed here, for our general liability insurance policy, which most businesses have. Homeowners are going to go get homeowners insurance or casualty and loss insurance at closing that you're used to getting. And the biggest scam that I think these lenders have is that you buy a $900,000 house and they want them to go insure the house for $900,000. And with an unscrupulous insurance agent or a realtor who doesn't know what they're doing, they might let them go and do that. They should only be required to insure either the higher of the loan amount or replacement value is what they really should be doing. If I buy a $900,000 house in Bel Air, it was probably sitting on a $450,000 lot over there, right? If it burns down, I still own the lot, right? So if I burn down and they're not going to give me $900,000 that I have in my pocket and then sell the lot for $450,000, woo, everyone's going to hope that the house catches on fire tomorrow, right? Because they just made an extra $450,000 that way, right? So they don't really do that. They're going to insure a replacement value that says if the lightning strikes it and it burns down, they're going to replace the structure to the manner of which it was. So the problem is we all kind of used to use $100 for this replacement value, and in 2014, A, you can't get a permit, and B, you can't find a contractor, and C, if you could, it takes a year to build it. My Wakefield house that we built, the fireplace caught on fire, and the whole back of the house caught on fire, and now we just built that house 2.5 years ago. But the whole energy code has changed, the impervious cover code has changed. So to try and rebuild the same house, I just built at 1258 Wakefield for my clients, is a holy nightmare over here at the city of Houston. Because my clients want the exact same house. Now they don't want us to have that many windows because of the energy code. They don't like the deck because where it was because of the impervious cover has changed. So it can be very complicated just to build the same house you just built. We've torn down all the house except the foundation, and the city doesn't like it because now we can't inspect the foundation. The damn bastards inspected it 2.5 years ago, right? It was engineered, it was formed up, the rebar was there, they inspected prior to the pour of the concrete, but it's very difficult to even get out of the permitting process over here on that house that had a fire on it. But they did have an insurance claim. They got the insurance money to basically replace the value of the house, plus all of their contents and everything in that also. But it's, you know, you just want to be careful. The number I think we should all use is about $150 a foot now for replacement value. If you've got a house and your client asks you, now if they're in River Oaks and they have a $1 million closet or something, that's a little funny. If they have something really, really weird, like a wine cellar or 7-car garage with a lift, it might be more than that. But the average house, even in the Woodlands today, because we have to buy a framer and a roof and shingles, but you got to pay the guy to do it. And he used to do it for $30,000, and now he's going to do it for $90,000. Remember? Even the guy in the Woodlands, the contractor, is not going to work because you can't get one for $30,000, or you'd be waiting 9 years to go get someone to go be the contractor. So you have to pay to play in the building world these days, and it costs more to play than it used to. So the point I want you to make is for replacement value, I think we ought to be thinking about $150 a square foot, and I think we ought to make sure that we're not over-insuring our clients when we go to closing, because they shouldn't pay for the land, okay? If they're financing 100%, the lender's going to want them to have, a higher amount, but don't pay attention to what they're insuring over there, and don't let them over-insure. Question about homeowners insurance, okay? Then we go here to what we have for real estate agents. We haven't really had this conversation about it. Is our errors and omissions insurance, okay? And we're charging each of you $50 on these transactions. It's not enough money for it to make any real difference one way or the other than for you to every time be reminded that we're paying for errors and omissions insurance. And what is that really getting us, okay? So here we go about errors and omissions. Errors and omissions insurance for real estate agents are covering us in the event that you make some mistake, create an error, or provide an omission, or there's some bodily or physical damage to properties outside of what I already own here. Okay? So, most errors and omissions claims stem from lack of disclosure. That's why you say disclose. your client has a house, kids splash water over the bathtub. You go on the listing appointment. They say, yeah, my kids are always splashing water everywhere. You say, well, shit, let's go and kill that and prime it and paint it right quick over there. And then we go down the road, we list the house, we sell the house. They get into it. 9 months later, there's a leak in a similar deal. The homeowner opens up the sheetrock. Mold is everywhere now. It's, of course, taken over the whole in between the first and second floor. Immediately, they're going to call the realtor. Second of all, they're going to call the homeowner. Third of all, they're going to call their lawyer. And they're going to say, you knew there was water, and where water is mold, and you didn't disclose to me before I bought it that you'd had a leak there. That's the type of thing that gets us in trouble. It's a gray area whether one has to disclose every water leak that you've ever had, because every house has some water leaks. Okay? It's normal to have the bathtub overflow and water to come in at a balcony. It's not uncommon. It's common in our industry. It's the resulting loss that results from it later, okay, that gets us in trouble there. So disclosure is the number one thing. We have one, got one right now. I don't even know which agent this is, but the people moved in, now they've come back and they see that there was some termites. The people painted over the termites that they saw around the fireplace or whatever. That's wrong. Okay. So see, there's a classic example of the buyer, a year later, or however long, is going back and going after the inspector, going to go after the realtor, is going to go after the old homeowner because they knew there were termites and they didn't disclose that there were termites, in their opinion. You know, and that there was some malicious act to cover up the fact that there were termites in this wood that they just painted over with enamel paint there. Why is it still on? Disclosure is the number one thing that get us. But we're covered for a lot of different things. Definitely, E&O insurance is covering us in the event that there's a claim against mold. We have mold coverage. We have $1 million per incident mold coverage in the event that one of these things happens. I mean, it's always under the sink where there was a leak with the disposal 6 months ago, and then they come back over there and the kid gets sick and he gets asthma, and you know, now we've got a whole medical claim because there was mold under the sink. There's usually mold wherever there's water, just in case you wonder. There's always a lot of mold. There's mold in everything in Houston, Texas. But we do have mold coverage in the event that there was some mold claim against us. Fair housing. This is another one that gets us all the time. This is when you, especially these rentals, which we're not even charging you for E&O insurance, but we have enough money from the sales to cover it. Here's a classic example. Jim Ford lists a garage apartment at 23rd and Oxford, and it's a normal Heights garage apartment built in 1954 or whatever, and someone calls from the back and they say, I want to show this to my mother, she's in a wheelchair. And Jim says, ain't no way for grandma to get up there because there's just a staircase and there's no way for someone in a wheelchair to be able to rent that place. Just randomly says it. Immediately those people turn right around, call HUD, and get their lawyer and go after and sue us because they didn't have equal access to that unit that everyone else did. The Americans with Disabilities Act kicks in, and immediately there's a claim against Jim Ford and myself for fair housing. We've discriminated on the individual who was in a wheelchair, right? Or let's take the old house, bungalow on Harvard and 16th or whatever. Same thing, they're in a wheelchair and they go to see it and we get them in, and then they can't get into the bathroom because the opening is 2 feet, the wheelchair's 2 feet 4 inches, right? Because the old houses, the doorways weren't big enough there. These sort of things have the potential to be very devastating when people want to get in a bunch of lawsuits, okay? And I see where it's easy. What does Jim Ford say? How are we going to get the woman in the wheelchair up into the garage apartment, okay? Or how are we going to get the woman in the wheelchair through the opening that doesn't meet ADA compliance, okay? And I see the problem. There's a fine line as the realtor is what you can say about that, okay? I'm just telling you, you have to be careful. And we used to have a rash, and they had a little blog about it the other day. I mean, the HUD has targeted different cities. Houston is one of those cities. It's a growth city where they come in And they are basically sting operations where they're going to test realtors, okay? And you can kind of, sometimes they're apparent. I mean, they're not even, they're just blatant about it or whatever. And other times they're not. Most of the time they are making telephone calls. They're not gonna go and look at a house typically. They're sitting in an office, could be in Washington DC, and they're making these telephone calls. And they've got, they're going to speak with an accent. It could be from Nairobi, it could be from Guatemala, it could be from Harlem, okay? And they're going to say something, I got 9 kids, can you show me this house tonight at 7:30? They're going to say something like that, and they're going to make some him haw that you're having dinner and you can't really show it. And then a cute little blonde thing, said, I'm in a sorority at Ole Miss, and I want to see it at 7:45. And you said, all right, I'll go show you. And you didn't show the one who just called 2 hours earlier. That's where they're going to go get us. Their housing is very sensitive.
So how did Jim get the wheelchair up to the?
What do we do there? 'Cause I think we have
Get a
somebody
fork
else
lift?
about that.
There are some exclusions for how it works. And there are, yes, don't have to show that individual the unit. It's how one talks to them and what one says that gets you in trouble, I think. This thing is never going to be ADA compliant, we can't rent to you. You know, or it doesn't, the criteria for this garage apartment doesn't meet your needs. Can I show you others that would? Let me go and try and facilitate a showing for you in an area, you know, or a unit that might be more acceptable to you. I'm happy to visit with the owner and see if there's some way that we can make it more accessible to you with your certain condition. I mean, it's how one talks to them that I think makes the difference.
I had, at your open house out there in Westview, I had a client come in, or a woman come in that was in a wheelchair, and was wondering about the upstairs, because it was it had an elevator shaft area, and so I took my cell phone and I videotaped it for her up there, and then I brought it back down to her, so.
That's good.
Something like that.
That's good.
I've had it where they've actually had a service dog and the owner didn't want a dog.
Right? You cannot discriminate against
And
that.
I called the owner and she got a little upset and I said, I'm sorry.
You
They
are
have a
required by
service
law.
dog, you gotta have it.
You're going to let that person, you're not going to discriminate on the individual that has a service dog.
But isn't it private ownership, if you're renting less than 4 units, you don't have to abide by?
There's always exceptions to most rules or whatever. It's there again, it's what we say to them, I think. Show the individual the unit first and see if they want it. They may not want it.
As a new home builder,
Uh-huh.
are the newer builders making the bathroom doors a little bit wider?
Sure they are.
Okay.
Sure they are. I mean, there's a code now for new
Yeah.
construction that has to be accessible. Same
So
with the smoke
you
detector.
can just
same
say,
with
you
the
know,
wiring.
if I can show you some newer home constructions that, you know, take into consideration, you
Certainly.
know, all people. I said, we can find you.
That costs 10 times more.
And you just need to be more, you need to be more.
This is individually owned. I'll need to visit with the owner about how we can make that possible. Get back to them, then give me a call.
Right.
And let's sit and talk about it. But be careful what you say about that sort of thing. All right, fair housing, mold. Here we go. Lockbox. You go over there to the lockbox, you pull the lockbox out, you show a house, you come back, you think you closed the lockbox, you didn't, the lockbox is open, someone else comes over there, steals their Monets and their fur coats and their $1 million purses because you were negligent with the access of the lockbox or whatever. It's covered for those sort of things. Don't do that sort of thing. You go and show your client a house, you're over there showing, she trips and falls and breaks her ankle. Then what are they going to do? What insurance is going to cover us? It's E&O insurance that's going to cover us for that. So I even explain when I go on listings, we have insurance that protects us in the event that there is physical damage, bodily damage, or loss of your property. But let's be realistic. The people are not just going to go after me and Boulevard Realty. They're going to go after the homeowner also. Because we're going to turn, our lawyers are going to turn right around and say, does your steps meet code? Did you have it lighted? Did you have a handrail? We were just doing normal and customary work. We didn't make our client jump out of a window, right? We were just showing a house the way that's done 50,000 times a day in Houston, Texas. And that would be our defense if we if 19 other people had walked through the house and they didn't trip and fall, the likelihood is that we were not negligent in our responsibility in doing our due diligence of showing that house on behalf of the client. But we do have insurance that protects us for this sort of stuff in the event that someone trips and falls and has a problem over there. Those are, yes?
So with our, because we have one of those, we have our umbrella policy, so with our, if our house is listed, when they go after that
Yes, they are.
umbrella policy?
They're gonna go after the homeowner. They're gonna go after us too, but they're gonna go after the homeowner too. There's no way they're not going to. The insurance company in law is gonna make them go after the homeowner also. Let's see. Here's a new one, a little kink in our deal. So this buying and the selling of your personal homes again, we're gonna have to modify our deal. When you buy a house, the most important thing for sure is always that you just notify them that you're an insurance agent. I mean, that you're a licensed real estate agent. If you do that, then the same thing. You can negotiate your 3%, you can have all your money, and I don't care about what you do for your personal homestead there. When you go to sell, ding, 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 here's a change, and we're gonna have to send you guys a modification. There's a requirement now, if an agent sells their personal home, okay? Our insurance will not cover us. Remember, they're likely to sue you 3 years later too, because that's when they find problems or whatever. You must provide a seller's disclosure. They must have an inspection, and you must provide and pay for a home warranty if you are an agent and you're selling your house and you want any of the discount of the commission, because if not, I'm going to have to use my part to go pay for that home warranty over there, and the sale of your personal house. So you're selling your personal house, somebody selling one lately, and we have to have on file the seller's disclosure signed by the buyer. They have to have had an inspection. We have to offer a home warranty, or our insurance cover does not cover us later. Remember, most of these insurance claims are years down the road. Very few people trip and fall and sue us the same day the trip happens. They sue us because they find out that you knew there were termites. You sell a house, it's $1 million. 2 years later, they get termites. They call out Chuck with Coastal. Chuck tells them, oh yeah, that homeowner had me out 2.5 years ago. I told them there were termites, but they didn't want to treat for termites. Yet they just bought it, and we didn't tell them that Chuck with Coastal had been out there 2.5 years earlier. And so it's a very small world. All the time, the people 3 years later call out John Feaster for the foundation, and he had already been to that house 3 years ago or 5 years ago or something. Or the plumber had been there. Or they find out a permit was pulled for the electrical but was never final. See, they do a little work, electrical problem, something's happening. 3 years later, they go hire someone to do it. Guy goes down to the city, pulls a permit, says, oh yeah, there's a permit open from 2007 that they never closed out, never had finalized. Grandpa did the work over there. It's very easy these days to figure out where people were not all the way up front with disclosing information.
Is there a time limit?
No time limit. No
So
time
it's
limit.
if you-
I even have an insurance policy tied to our insurance policy for all the stuff that happened with Karen Durden Associates, and Karen still pays for a policy still 6 years later for the stuff that happened from 2008 before. I just really have to insure the areas, but yeah, I certainly, right after I bought the firm and changed the name, we got sued for things, we got in trouble for things, the typical thing we've talked about. You go on a showing, it's a bungalow in the 6th ward, they ask you if this is a load-bearing wall, you say, no, this isn't a load-bearing wall. And then 3 years later, they decide they're ready to do their remodel, and they bring their architect and engineer over and says, oh yes, this is a load-bearing wall, now you have to do this, and they immediately call it, I wouldn't have bought that house if your agent didn't tell me that, now it's going to cost an extra $100,000, there's the whole mental, I had to meet architects, I was upset, I had a miscarriage over the whole thing.
People don't take responsibility for
Yes,
anything.
it's the typical thing that they get us for, and it's always years down the road. It's always the lead-based paint thing. Never gets us when we're selling the house to the young couple who buy houses all throughout the city. It's when they get pregnant, and when they're sick, and when they're moody little bitches over there, got nothing better to do than to sit on their little maternity leave and Google lead-based paint. I'm telling you, the world is gonna end because there was lead-based paint. And what happens is always, you had 5 offers, and you checked the box and provided everything for the first 4 houses, but we're just exhausted as hell by the 5th offer, right? And we never get the box checked. It's signed, we have seen it, or it's dated by the buyer before the seller. And the lawyer calls me up and says, but how can the buyer sign it first, but we didn't have the information from the seller? So the information, the whole form is stupid and doesn't work because we didn't have the information. And I go, right on, baby. I mean, I'm with you. I mean, what defense do I have there if the seller has to provide information and the buyer signs it beforehand, before the seller does, and the buyer didn't have the chance to review the information with whether or not they wanted to make their offer or not? Disclosure of that sort of information is really what E&O insurance provides. Our policy is about $16,000. It's based on the dollar volume and the number of transactions. We haven't really had any major claims. I usually buy my way out of them because I don't want a lot of claims over here these days because it affects us down the road. And those things can be resolved with money. But, you know, so here's the one. I mean, we're in this one with Dusty's clients at 416 Arlington. I'm telling you, over the stupid fence because they knew the fence encroached when they bought it. When they went to sell it, they didn't tell the people that there was a fence encroachment, which was on the survey. But they were all upset, and now they're in a fight with the next door neighbor. They have spent $30,000 and $40,000 suing one another over these stupid fences because the fences were here. This house is about 10 years old. AC goes out. Can't put the AC back where it was. Remember, it's 3 feet before. It was a 10-SEER air conditioning unit. Now it's a 16-SEER air conditioning unit. Now we have to reroute all the AC to the backyard of what is a 25-foot wide stupid house over there with only 10 feet before the garage. So now the AC units are right in her kitchen. Her backyard's ruined. They can't put the pool that they thought they wanted. All this drama over a stupid fence and it not being in the right location or not disclosing that they had an agreement. There was an agreement for the two to have a utility easement, but the builder never filed the easement. It didn't show up on the title commitment, but was discussed to the people that there was an easement. Well, then these people never wanted it to be filed over here, right? They were new homeowners. They wanted the fence right on the line. These people don't want the fence because they want to be able to put the AC units back where they were over here. It's just disclosure. One more time, it's just disclosure of how it works. If you know something, and they have a nice article in the Realtor magazine about the fences. You buy a property, the fences don't follow the line. You go to sell a property, you didn't disclose on your information from other sources or on your seller's disclosure that you knowingly know that the fences don't follow the line. Someone else buys it, they go to the expense of having to move the fence or whatever, and they thought they had an extra foot, now they don't have that extra foot. They're suing the sellers for lack of disclosure because you knew. You went disclosing, you signed your survey, and you knew that the fence didn't follow the line. When you go to resell it, you should put on the seller's disclosure that you know that the fences don't follow the line, right? It's normal disclosure. Find that relatively easy to explain to people. Here's my old survey. You need to get your own and rely on your own information. But when I bought it, I had knowledge that the fences did not follow the lines. Clear enough. Disclosure, disclosure, disclosure.
If you provide the old survey, you're going to have a brand new one. Should you, in addition to signing every page of seller's disclosure, have the buyer initial that survey?
I think that's lovely. I think that's a lovely idea. And all the time, here's where it gets us again too. Get under contract, fall out of contract over inspections or something that they claimed, and then we don't modify the seller's disclosure for this second time because automatically you put it back active and there's 15 more offers and we're all busy putting together these people. You've got to modify these seller's disclosures and put whatever information you know, especially if there's some supplemental information. Provide another little sheet over here. So I'm selling 7th Street. It didn't work out the first time over the 71-page inspection report, but we went back, we modified that inspection report, 71 pages. My client made notes on it, and then they made additional. We have subsequently replaced the baseboards, cleaned the gutters, clean the debris under the house to the best of our knowledge. We hired someone, we didn't go under there and look at it. You know, disclosed the information and provided that additional sheet for the buyers to sign and put it online. Additional information.
I also have the buyer's initial, the first page, I sent them that lead-based page pamphlet,
Mhm.
via zip forms or put it, drop it in DocuSign, and I have them initial the first page, because the thing says you have to provide it, it doesn't say you have to make them read it,
Right.
so I.
They don't
just-
read it.
And so I just have them initial the first page,
Right.
but they have the whole thing, but then I have proof not only that I send it,
Yeah, that's a
but
good
that
idea.
they actually received it.
Okay.
Now, what happens if there is something they didn't disclose? You didn't know it 5 years later?
Well, if we didn't know it, we didn't
I
know
mean,
it.
so
All
they
the
just-
time that comes
It
up
just
now.
had, not prove that we know it, but I mean, like, I did have someone who did something and I mean, I had no idea.
Right. I
So
mean,
you just don't.
what we don't know, we don't know.
Yeah.
I like all these files and I like all the notes. When something happens, we pull back out the file. And I mean, that's probably my biggest concern about back agent. It's easy to find something, but it doesn't have all the other little stuff that we used to
Yes,
have.
right.
And I keep
Right.
all my little files for years and years and years and years. A, I want the chance to resell all of those houses. But B, I need the information of the notes, you know. But yes, sometimes these sellers are going to not give us all the information. They're just not going to. But if we just don't know, how would we know that they pulled
Well,
that
I just
permit?
didn't know if they would still could come back and get.
Oh, they're gonna go back after us.
Oh, they're
I
gonna
mean,
stop.
they'll go back after us, but I mean, we can defend that. How would we know that? I don't know what permits they pulled in 2007. How would I know that? You know, I had them fill out the seller's disclosure, just ask those sort of questions. If they don't provide it, they don't provide it. We are covered for these open houses, same thing, if people trip and fall in an open house, or fall off a balcony, or lock themselves out, or in, or whatever. We're very lucky, we had a diamond ring stolen once, you know, out of someone's master closet. I think that's the most expensive property thing we've ever really lost. Yeah, I mean, so, try not to have them, do I?
2 Rolexes.
Yeah, we've lost some, well, we've lost a few things. The diamond ring was more expensive, I think, but it's always grandma's diamond ring that's irreplaceable. It's never the one they just bought.
I
But,
went to
you
an
know,
open house
try
the other
not
day,
to
they had
do
gold
that.
jewelry out, real gold jewelry, like necklaces and watches just right there where any.
In the closet?
In the bathroom.
Uh-huh.
They were just hanging there, but there was obviously like 14 karat gold
Right.
jewelry.
Ridiculous. They shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Okay, any comments about E&O insurance? We hadn't, yes?
Going back to your comment where you said if you sell your property, you have to provide the warranty and inspection. Is that for your homestead or is that also for investment? Because what if it's a tear down? You'd have to make them still get an inspection and warranty?
See, I mean, they want us to offer these warranties, which I think is a wasted money also. I'll have to see if it's a tear down and people are using, I'll have to verify.
Because what if the
one.
buyer refuses, he's like, I don't want all that, you know?
Well, what happens is they buy it, they think they're gonna tear it down, and their plans change, now they have a house, they go to lease it over here for a year, because it's gonna take 2 years to get the contractor anyway, and now there's a leak with the water heater, and I mean, I see where they could come back on us, and our insurance company wants them to go to the home warranty first, and if they go to the home warranty and it's not repairable, then they could go after us. I'll look in it and see. It's predominantly it's clear on your personal homestead, that's what they want. It's not as clear on an investment property like that. Yes, Jim?
These newer home warranty companies, I mean, are they legit or they
Yeah.
play hard
Well,
ball?
I mean, they cannot make money if they charge $400 and pay out more than $400, right?
Right.
There's no way to pay for that office building or that chicken, that little BMW.
Right.
So they can't be paying out but about 15% of the money that they bring in because they got a big CEO in the Hamptons also right this week.
Right.
So they're in the business of not paying out more than they bring in, as is New York Life and you know every other thing. I mean, they're playing the risk. So sure, where they get you is they don't cover normal wear and tear, and O-ring on a faucet's normal wear and tear.
Right.
And a T&P valve only is guaranteed for 1 year, so when a T&P valve goes out in year 3, it's not covered under the warranty. But they never break in the first year. They would have broken the first day if it was going to break. You know, so that's how they get you.
What's the orange company, American Home Warranty, is that the one that's?
Home warranty America.
Okay, yeah, they did bad for me, just so everybody knows.
None of them are going to do that well. I mean, let's just be realistic. It's a crap shot over there, whether or not they're really going to work.
Yeah, I don't mind.
Okay, moving out of, insurance. I want us to, we're still in this deal. I am meeting with fairly major people in our world because I'm concerned about this phenomenon of what's going on with value. And all of my really smart, wealthy friends are all telling me that we are in a value shift for what is the inner city of the city of Houston, okay? I think things are expensive. I think lots at $500,000 and $600,000 that were $275 3 years ago. I think it's pretty amazing that we can jump 40, 50, 60, 100% in a year or two. And it's because we have too much information. We're focusing right here and we're not backing up and looking what everyone else is looking at sometimes. So my really smart friends are telling me this inner city has nowhere to go but up. Okay? That we're not in a bubble. We could be in a bubble in Cinco Ranch and Pearland and the Woodlands because they can go 2 more miles and build Greatwood number 9 over there. And it's going to be the same as Greatwood number 7. But in the city, you will continue to add more and more people to the city, which will create more demand for inner city living and substantial more traffic for the suburbs. So if your commute from the Woodlands in 2008 was 30 minutes, and in 2014 it's 1 hour, because we've added another 250,000 people to that area. When we add another couple 100,000 people a year, and the commute to the Woodlands becomes 2 hours, which is soon going to be here, then it creates the demand of those people who never would have lived in the city to move back into the city. Okay? And they're wealthier than they used to be, and the inner city is more attractive than it used to be. So you've got demand of more people moving in, demand for the sections in the outer areas becoming so congested also that the people will be willing. It's why you're willing to pay $2,500 a foot in Manhattan and only $500 a foot in Brooklyn, because one's in Brooklyn, the other's in Manhattan, okay? It's 5 minutes by the train underneath the water there, but there's a shift mentally that people are willing to pay that. We're in the same scenario with what is the inner city, and we've been so undervalued that our shift from $200 a foot to $225 to $250, when Manhattan's at $2,500 and LA's at $2,350 and London's at $6,000 a foot, we're going to be able to handle the paradigm shift from $200 a foot to $400 and $500 a foot, which is still going to be 1/10 of what it is someplace else or whatever, but it's just going to be substantially higher than what we're used to in the inner city. I don't know that this applies. I don't think the Woodlands can handle 40% appreciation for multiple years here. But inner city, Houston, Texas, houses in the Heights, houses in Montrose, condo living that used to be $250 a foot, it's going to be $400 a foot, and then it's going to be $700 a foot, because it's still 1/10 the price of what it is in London. Okay? And we're not even used to condos costing $400 a foot. We think that that's a lot of money, but it's really not a lot of money when you're coming from some other place or whatever. And the amenities that they're soon going to get are unlike any that they've gotten before. The pedestrian friendly. Nobody moved to downtown because it was pedestrian friendly. They moved because it was downtown Houston, or it's architecturally appealing to live in the Capitol Lofts or something. It was a type of living that they weren't used to. Now people are moving to these deals because of other things, hike and bike trails, restaurants, wine bars, lower maintenance, things that we don't normally associate necessarily with just living in a high-rise. They lived in a high-rise for safety and security or lock and leave. That was the main reason people went. Half of ours in Houston were corporate housing. So the guy who lived in Kingwood could come to the baseball game and not have to drive out at 10:30 at night after he was at the suite drinking Bud Light all night. Now people are wanting to live into these environments, and the shift it's a whole paradigm shift of how these things are working. It's very interesting, I think, to me. And like I say, we're going to pay more into these areas. Here's the deal. When people get stupid, they get stupid. So they're willing to pay for a nice house in a nice location. They're not willing to pay for a nice house in a bad location. So it still won't work if the banks lend money on the railroad track or on the feeder road, or people build custom houses that are too far out on the extreme, Glen Cove is a prime example. It's a custom house designed for one person that you can't resell this house in a great economy after 4 years of trying to sell it because it was too specific for one individual person, okay? So there will always be some stupid people out there, but I'm talking about in the main areas of where we're living. Can't necessarily put a house on Shepherd and think you're going to get the same as you might get on, you know, Element or something else over there. You've got to pay attention to what you're doing. But these prices, I mean, because we're going to be in this slight little lull again, because we've been in the lull here for a month or two. You're going to see in October and November, you're going to see another shift. You're going to see this rush over here again. And like, I don't want us to focus too much on price per square foot, but I want you to see the value of what people are willing to pay for is going to be significantly higher in these desirable neighborhoods, and there's lots of desirable neighborhoods in the city. There's not just a few anymore.
Yeah, it looks like those people that came from California to live here that used, because the price of living, they could get such a fabulous house for, that was crazy.
And those same people, these are my clients who moved here as a hedge fund guy because avoiding the state income tax in California. They have a house in Memorial, a $2 million house. We looked at a lot on Inverness, 4008 Inverness, which we bid $4 million for on, which the value of Derrick in River Oaks, that same lot was listed for $2.5 million 4 years ago. They couldn't sell it. Now it's $4.5 million. The last two comps, we used to all think River Oaks lots were $100 a foot. The last ones that have sold are $171 a foot. They're all $180,000 over the list price because how much land over an acre in River Oaks can there really be? It's supply and demand again. And the people are willing to pay it. There's no comp that says that lot's worth $171 a foot except the 15 people who are willing to pay for it. That's what's determining the value of it. And, you know, there again, he's saying, we're all going to look up and say an acre and a half on Inverness in River Oaks for $4.5 million is going to be dirt cheap in 5 years from now. They're solidly convinced of it. Because how many acre and a half tracts are there in the inner city that's gaining the population and the popularity that we're getting today? There's not that many of them. So supply and demand is really going to dictate what happens over there. But these values are shifting rapidly. And I think you're going to continue to see them.
One note, can I mention the mass transit plan? I don't know if y'all are aware, but the city is undergoing a look-see at redoing all the master transit.
All the metro routes are being rerouted for the first time in 25 years.
And we have an unusual circumstance here in the Heights. We do not have light rail. We have an awesome connection point from the extension on North Main. And the transit station on Studewood is in need of our support in order to get people from the Heights to the light rail, which will greatly facilitate us getting people that live in the medical center, work in the medical center to live here. Right now, if you've been on Studewood or Montrose to go down to the medical center and work, it's a bear.
Right.
But if we can get this connection, it will really push us over the top with people that work in the medical center and want to live here. And this is the best place.
We are closer than Pearland to the medical center.
Oh, yeah.
However, when you show those doctors, when they get off work at 5:30 and they want to come up and look at something in the Heights, and it takes them 35 minutes, and they can't believe it. It never takes me 35 minutes, but they're just hitting it right.
That's why we need the transit.
Yeah, and that's happened to me all the time. They say,
We are getting, like the anesthesiologists, I've done a couple of these lately, they go to work at 5:30 or 6 in the morning, and then they're dying by 2 or 2:30. We seem to be able to attract those people just fine in the medical world over here. But yes, if they try and come at 5:30,
But I've had some doctors not losing to the Heights because.
And it's only gonna get worse.
only
It's
gonna
getting worse in our area.
And we'd
Sure.
really like to see that. So pay attention right now. I know the Sunset Heights is distributing a petition
Yeah.
signed to keep that. They're wanting to close that transit station.
Okay. Very good.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments? This was good. 1 hour. Okay. Thank you very much. That was it.
Eric has brought lunch again.
Eric.
And we
Make
also
somebody a good
have, what are those things called?
He's trying.
Ice cream sandwiches in the freezer.